Mark's hand trembled as he raised it to knock on Catherine's office door. The text he'd received 10 minutes ago still burned in his mind, "My office." Now. 3 words from the CEO that could mean anything from immediate termination to, well, he couldn't imagine a positive scenario. Not after the presentation disaster this morning. He knocked softly, hearing a muffled, "Come in," from the other side. When he entered, he found Catherine standing by the window, her silhouette framed by the setting sun, her long platinum hair catching the golden light. She turned, her expression unreadable. "Lock the door, Mark. I don't want anyone interrupting us." The weight of single fatherhood had taught Mark to expect the worst while hoping for the best. As he turned the lock with a soft click, he wondered how he would tell his daughter Emma that Daddy might be looking for a new job. At 7 years old, she was already too perceptive, too aware of the precarious balance of their lives since her mother had walked out 3 years ago. Catherine Morgan wasn't just his boss, she was the formidable CEO who had transformed a failing tech company into an industry leader in just 4 years. Known for her brilliant mind and uncompromising standards, she rarely spoke to employees below executive level. Which made Mark's current situation all the more terrifying. "Do you know why I called you here?" she asked, her voice surprisingly soft as she gestured for him to sit in one of the plush chairs facing her desk. Mark swallowed hard. "I assume it's about this morning's presentation. I take full responsibility for." "Stop," Catherine interrupted, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "That's not why you're here. What happened next would change everything. Not just for Mark's career, but for his carefully constructed life as a devoted single father who had sworn off relationships after his heart had been shattered." Catherine moved around her desk, perching on its edge just a few feet from where Mark sat. Up close, he noticed the subtle fatigue in her eyes, a vulnerability he'd never associated with the untouchable CEO. "I've been watching you, Mark. Not just today, but for months." She leaned forward slightly. "You're the hardest working person in this company. You're the first to arrive, last to leave, and somehow still managed to coach your daughter's soccer team." Mark blinked in surprise. "You know about Emma's soccer?" "I make it my business to know about my valuable employees," she replied. "Especially ones I'm considering for promotion." The word hung in the air between them. Promotion? Mark's mind raced. The senior project manager position had been vacant for weeks, but he'd never imagined himself as a contender. "I don't understand," he admitted. "This morning I completely fumbled the Wilson account presentation." Catherine laughed, the sound warm and unexpected in the formal space of her office. "Because Johnson deliberately gave you the wrong data set. He's been sabotaging you for months." Mark felt the floor shift beneath him. Johnson, his immediate supervisor, had been undermining him? The realization made his stomach clench. But why would he? "Because he knows what I know," Catherine said, standing now and moving to the small bar in the corner of her office. She poured 2 glasses of water, handing one to Mark. "That you're better at his job than he is." As the evening shadows lengthened across Catherine's office, Mark learned about the corporate chess game that had been playing out around him, one where he'd been a pawn about to become a knight. Catherine had been quietly observing his work, impressed by both his professional skills and his dedication to fatherhood. "The promotion is yours if you want it," she said finally. "But there's something else we need to discuss." Mark tensed, waiting for the catch, the impossible condition that would force him to choose between career advancement and being there for Emma. "The position requires travel, not extensive, but some." "I know that's complicated for you." Catherine's eyes held his. "So I've authorized a flexible arrangement. You'll have access to the company jet when needed, and we'll schedule around Emma's important events." Mark stared at her, speechless. "Why would you do that for me?" Catherine turned away, her profile sharp against the darkening window. "Because 4 years ago, I was you. Single parent, struggling to balance everything, watching opportunities pass me by because no one would accommodate my situation. She looked back at him. The difference is, no one gave me a chance. I had to fight for every inch. The revelation stunned Mark. Catherine Morgan, the Ice Queen CEO, was a single parent? The woman whose personal life was such a carefully guarded secret that the company rumor mill had given up trying to penetrate it years ago? I didn't know, he said simply. Few do. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. My son is in college now. It gets easier, but it never gets easy. Something shifted between them in that moment, a connection formed not just of professional respect but of shared experience. Two people who understood the particular challenges of raising children alone while pursuing careers in a world designed for traditional family structures. As Mark left Catherine's office that evening, promotion accepted and mind reeling with possibilities, he couldn't have imagined how this unexpected alliance would evolve in the coming months. Or how Catherine's mentorship would gradually reveal a woman so different from her public persona, brilliant but lonely, powerful but vulnerable in ways that mirrored his own. The promotion changed everything for Mark and Emma. Suddenly, their cramped apartment could be exchanged for a house with a yard. Emma's dream of taking piano lessons became possible. The constant financial anxiety that had been Mark's companion since becoming a single parent began to ease. But the most unexpected change came in the form of Catherine herself. What began as professional mentorship gradually evolved into friendship. She began joining them for occasional dinners, bringing books for Emma and engaging the precocious child in conversations that treated her with respect rather than condescension. "You're good with her," Mark observed one evening as they watched Emma playing in the park after a company picnic. Catherine's smile held a touch of sadness. "I missed a lot of these moments with Jason. Always thought there would be time later." "There's still time," Mark said gently. He's 19 now, finding his own path. The window for pushing him on swings has closed. She turned to Mark, her expression serious. "Don't make my mistakes. The work will always be there." Their relationship developed slowly, cautiously. Both carried scars from past betrayals, both had constructed careful walls around their hearts. Mark had sworn off dating after his ex-wife had declared family life too constraining, and walked away from both him and Emma. Catherine had her own closely guarded history of heartbreak. "Why did you really give me that promotion?" Mark asked her months later, as they shared a late dinner in her office, reviewing quarterly projections. Catherine set down her fork, considering him with those penetrating eyes. "Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That vulnerability isn't weakness." She held his gaze. "Watching you balance everything, seeing how you never hide being a father, how you're not ashamed to leave meetings for school events, it challenged me. I've spent years pretending my personal life doesn't exist because I thought that was strength." Mark felt something warm unfurl in his chest. "And now? Now I think perhaps I was wrong." Her smile was tentative, a rare glimpse of uncertainty from a woman who projected nothing but confidence. Their first kiss happened on a rainy Tuesday evening, when both had stayed late at the office. It was gentle, questioning, both of them surprised by the intensity of feeling that had developed between them. They pulled apart, startled by the implications. "This complicates things," Catherine whispered. "I'm good with complicated," Mark replied, his hand still cradling her face. "I've been doing complicated for years." But complicated didn't begin to describe the challenges they faced. Office relationships were discouraged but not forbidden. However, a CEO dating a senior manager raised eyebrows and sparked rumors. Some suggested Mark's promotion had been based on personal rather than professional considerations, despite his proven track record since taking the position. The greatest challenge, however, came from Emma. At first delighted by Catherine's presence in their lives, she gradually became withdrawn, acting out in ways that bewildered Mark. She hates me, Catherine said one evening after Emma had been particularly cold. She's scared, Mark corrected gently. The last woman who was important to me left us both. She's protecting herself. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Catherine had been scheduled to present at an important conference but cancelled at the last minute when she learned Emma had the lead in her school play, the same night as the conference. You didn't have to do that, Mark told her, stunned by the sacrifice. Yes, I did, Catherine replied simply. Some things matter more. When Emma spotted Catherine in the audience, her face transformed with surprise and then a cautious joy. After the performance, she launched herself into Catherine's arms with an enthusiasm that brought tears to both adults' eyes. You came, Emma whispered. I wouldn't have missed it, Catherine replied, her voice thick with emotion. That night, as Mark tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question he'd been waiting for. Is Catherine going to be your girlfriend now? Would that be okay with you? He asked carefully. Emma considered this with the serious deliberation only a 7-year-old can muster. She makes you laugh. You didn't laugh much before. Out of the mouths of babes, Mark thought, realizing his daughter had seen what he himself had barely acknowledged, that Catherine had brought joy back into his life in ways that went far beyond professional success. Their relationship deepened, strengthened by the challenges they overcame together. Catherine revealed more of herself. Not just the polished, perfect executive, but the woman who sometimes doubted herself, who carried regrets about the time she'd missed with her son, who had dreams beyond the corporate world. Mark shared his own fears, of failing Emma, of not being enough as both mother and father, of the vulnerability that came with opening his heart again. In each other, they found not just romantic partners but true companions who understood the complex balancing act their lives required. When the board of directors questioned the appropriateness of their relationship, Catherine faced them with characteristic directness. My personal life has never affected my professional judgment, she told them. But if you feel it has, I'll tender my resignation immediately. The threat was enough. Catherine's leadership had tripled company profits, no one was eager to see her leave. Instead, they established clear guidelines about professional interactions and reporting structures to avoid conflicts of interest. The real test of their relationship came 6 months into their romance, when Johnson, the supervisor who had sabotaged Mark, launched a calculated attack. He'd been quietly gathering evidence of favoritism, documenting every instance where Catherine had supported Mark's initiatives or given him special consideration. The dossier landed on the board chairman's desk with an anonymous note suggesting an investigation. Mark found Catherine in her office late that evening, staring at her computer with a stricken expression. They want to audit all my decisions regarding you for the past year, she said without preamble when he entered. Every promotion, every project assignment, every budget approval. They can't seriously think. They can and they do. Catherine's voice was flat. Johnson has been thorough. Taken out of context, it looks damning. Mark felt sick. This is my fault. If I hadn't. Stop. Catherine stood, her eyes flashing with sudden fire. This is exactly what he wants, to make us doubt ourselves, doubt each other. She moved around the desk, taking Mark's hands in hers. I promoted you because you deserved it. I fell in love with you because you're extraordinary. Those two facts exist independently of each other. What do we do? Mark asked, feeling the ground shifting beneath them again. Catherine's smile was fierce. We fight. Together. The next morning, they walked into the emergency board meeting side by side. Catherine had spent the night preparing, pulling performance metrics, client testimonials, and project outcomes that demonstrated Mark's exceptional contributions. But it was Mark who delivered the masterstroke. Before we begin, he said calmly, placing a folder on the conference table, I'd like to submit my own evidence. He opened it, revealing printouts of emails, altered documents, and meeting notes. This is proof that Johnson has been systematically undermining projects under his supervision, not just mine, but those of several team members who threatened his position. The board members exchanged glances as Mark continued. I've been gathering this information for months, intending to present it through proper channels. I held back because I wanted to be certain. Now I am. The investigation that followed vindicated both Mark and Catherine completely. Johnson was terminated, and the board issued a formal apology. But the experience had shaken them, forcing them to confront the fragility of what they were building together. I almost lost everything today, Catherine admitted that night as they sat on her balcony, watching the city lights below. Not just my job, but my reputation. My integrity. Mark took her hand. But you didn't. We didn't. Because you were prepared. Because you fought for us. She turned to him, her expression vulnerable in a way few people ever saw. No one's ever fought for me before. I've always had to be the strong one, the one who handles everything alone. You're not alone anymore, Mark said simply, pulling her close. That night marked a turning point. The walls Catherine had built over years of self-reliance began to truly crumble, allowing Mark to see the woman behind the CEO, a woman who had sacrificed much for success but who longed for the connection and partnership she'd never allowed herself to need. Another pivotal moment came months later, when Catherine received a call that her son Jason had been in a minor car accident at college. Though he wasn't seriously injured, the incident triggered all her maternal fears and insecurities. I should have been there more, she confessed to Mark as they drove to the hospital 3 hours away. Maybe if I'd been a more present mother, he wouldn't be so reckless. Mark glanced at her, seeing the rare tears she was fighting to hold back. Catherine, you raised an independent young man who's finding his way. That's what parenting is. Preparing them to make their own choices, even when those choices scare us. Is that what you tell yourself about Emma? She asked, a hint of her usual sharpness returning. Every single day, he admitted with a small smile. And then I worry anyway. When they arrived at the hospital, they found Jason sitting up in bed, his arm in a cast but otherwise fine. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw not just his mother but Mark as well. Mom, you didn't have to come all this way, he protested. I told you it was just a broken arm. Of course I came, Catherine said, her professional composure firmly back in place though Mark could see the relief in her eyes. And I brought a friend. Jason's gaze shifted to Mark, curious and slightly wary. The famous Mark. Mom's mentioned you. Mark raised an eyebrow at Catherine, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. All good things, I hope. Mostly that you're not an idiot like most of the people she works with, Jason replied with a grin that transformed his face, suddenly revealing his resemblance to his mother. High praise, coming from her. The tension broke, and as the three of them talked, Mark watched Catherine with her son, saw the love between them that existed despite the challenges, saw how Jason's eyes softened when he looked at his mother even as he teased her mercilessly about her overprotectiveness. Later, as Jason slept and they sat in the hospital cafeteria sharing terrible coffee, Catherine looked at Mark with wonder. He likes you. I'm very likable, Mark replied with a straight face. She laughed softly. You don't understand. Jason doesn't like anyone I date. Ever. So you've dated a lot, then? Mark teased, enjoying the rare opportunity to fluster the normally composed CEO. Hardly. She stirred her coffee absently. There's been no one serious since his father left. No one worth introducing to him. Her eyes met Mark's. Until you. The simple statement held such weight, such meaning. In that moment, Mark knew they were building something rare and precious, a second chance at family for both of them, a healing of old wounds, a new beginning built on mutual respect and understanding. The most unexpected challenge came just weeks before their one-year anniversary. Mark's ex-wife Vanessa suddenly reappeared after nearly 4 years of minimal contact. She'd moved across the country with her new husband, but now that relationship had ended, and she'd returned to the city, with intentions that soon became clear. She wants to be part of Emma's life again, Mark told Catherine one evening, his voice tight with tension. She says she's made mistakes and wants to make amends. Catherine's face remained carefully neutral. What do you think? I think Emma deserves to have her mother in her life, Mark said slowly. But I'm terrified of what this will do to her. Vanessa has a pattern of walking away when things get difficult. The situation grew more complicated when Vanessa learned about Catherine. Her initial friendly overtures turned cold, and she began suggesting that Emma was being confused by Catherine's presence. She's trying to drive a wedge between us, Catherine observed after a particularly tense exchange during an Emma handoff. She sees me as competition. You're not competition, Mark said firmly. You're family. But the damage was being done. Emma, caught between her returning mother and the woman who had become a steady maternal presence in her life, began showing signs of stress, nightmares, clinginess, regression in school. Mark was torn between his daughter's need for her biological mother and his protective instincts. It was Catherine who found the solution, though it cost her deeply. We need to step back, she told Mark one night after Emma had finally fallen asleep following a particularly difficult day. Just temporarily. Let Emma rebuild her relationship with Vanessa without feeling caught in the middle. Mark stared at her in disbelief. You want us to break up? No, Catherine said firmly. Never that. But maybe I should be less present for a while. Give Emma space to figure out how she feels about her mother without worrying about being loyal to me. That's not fair to you, Mark protested. You've been more of a mother to her than Vanessa ever was. Catherine's smile was sad but determined. This isn't about fair. It's about what Emma needs right now. For 6 weeks, Catherine maintained a careful distance. She still saw Mark, but their time together was private, away from Emma. She sent the little girl books and small gifts but didn't visit. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, harder than building her company, harder than raising Jason alone, because for the first time in her life, Catherine had found a family she wanted desperately to protect, and now she had to step away from it. The turning point came unexpectedly. Mark called Catherine late one evening, his voice tight with emotion. Can you come over? Emma's asking for you. When Catherine arrived, she found Emma sitting on the couch in her pajamas, clutching the stuffed penguin Catherine had given her months ago. Hi, sweetheart, Catherine said carefully, unsure of her welcome. Emma looked up, her small face serious. Mom says you're trying to take me away from her. Catherine felt her heart constrict but kept her voice steady. That's not true, Emma. I would never try to take you away from your mom. That's what I told her, Emma said with the simple certainty of childhood. Because you always tell the truth, even when it's hard. That's what Dad says. Catherine glanced at Mark, who stood in the doorway watching them, his eyes suspiciously bright. Your mom loves you very much, Catherine said gently. And so do I. You don't have to choose between us. Emma considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. Mom says she's not going away again. But she said that before. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Catherine replied carefully. But they can learn from them and do better. Like when I messed up my math test and then studied harder? Catherine smiled. Exactly like that. Emma nodded, apparently satisfied. I told Mom I want you to come to my birthday party next week. She said she'd think about it. Her small face turned stubborn. But it's my party, so I get to choose. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Mark told Catherine what had happened. Vanessa had begun making increasingly negative comments about Catherine to Emma, trying to turn the child against her. But Emma, with the clear-eyed perception of children, had seen through the manipulation. She asked Vanessa why, if you were so terrible, you never said anything bad about her, Mark explained. Vanessa didn't have an answer for that. The birthday party became a turning point. Catherine attended, bringing a telescope Emma had been coveting. A gift that acknowledged the child's growing interest in astronomy. Vanessa was cool but civil, and by the end of the day, a fragile truce had been established. Over the following months, a new balance emerged. Vanessa remained part of Emma's life but gradually accepted Catherine's presence as well. It wasn't perfect, there were still tense moments and occasional flare-ups, but for Emma's sake, they found a way forward. "You amaze me," Mark told Catherine one evening as they watched Emma showing Vanessa her science project. The two heads, one dark like Mark's, one fair like her mother's, bent together over the display board. "You could have fought her, could have made this so much harder." "I learned something from you," Catherine replied, leaning against him. "That sometimes strength is knowing when not to fight." A year after that first meeting in Catherine's office, Mark found himself once again knocking on her door, this time with a small velvet box in his pocket and his heart in his throat. "Come in," she called, looking up from her computer with a smile that still made his pulse quicken. "Lock the door," he said, echoing her words from that fateful day. "I don't want anyone interrupting us." Catherine raised an eyebrow but complied, curiosity evident in her expression. "What's this about?" Mark took a deep breath. "A year ago, I walked into this office expecting to be fired. Instead, you changed my life." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "You showed me that being vulnerable isn't weakness. You taught Emma that people can be trusted to stay. You reminded me that I could love again." He dropped to one knee, watching her eyes widen in realization. "Catherine Morgan, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in all things, not just at work but in life?" For a moment, the formidable CEO was speechless, tears gathering in her eyes. Then she pulled him to his feet, kissing him with a passion that answered his question before she even spoke the word. Yes. Their wedding was small but joyful. Emma served as flower girl, beaming with pride in her new role as daughter and stepdaughter. Jason stood as his mother's best man, his initial wariness of Mark having evolved into genuine respect and friendship. Even Vanessa attended, her presence a testament to the complex, imperfect, but loving family they were all creating together. As Catherine and Mark exchanged vows, they made promises not just to each other but to their children, promises to be present, to be honest, to create a home where vulnerability was strength and where love wasn't diminished by being shared but multiplied. Their journey wasn't perfect. They faced challenges from blending their families, from balancing demanding careers with personal lives, from learning to navigate the complex dynamics of step-parenting. But in each other, they found the strength to face whatever came their way. And it all began with those simple words, "Lock the door. I don't want anyone interrupting us." If you enjoyed this story of unexpected connection and second chances, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us all that love can find us in the most unexpected places. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below.